Joining us now, House Majority Whip Republican representative from the great state of Louisiana, Congressman Steve Scalise. Congressman, good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Let me ask you a question we've been talking about for the last hour and a half or so, which is that America is at war in some form right now, and yet Congress is out campaigning, they're out raising money, they're out kissing babies and shaking hands. Do you feel like Congress should be in Washington right now debating this critical issue?
We actually did debate it, in fact, when the president asked Congress to give him authorization to train Syrian troops, to vet those Syrian troops, and give him authorization as well to arm those Syrian troops. We actually debated it very extensively on the House floor, passed legislation that the president asked for to give him that authority, and we stand ready if there's anything else that Congress needs to do. But right now the president, in that authorization, asked for some specific things, and we gave him that authorization, and he's got to put a coalition together now. That's part of what the authorization we passed was, to go put a coalition together of countries in the Middle East that are going to help combat the terrorist ISIL all around the region.
But that was to arm, the authorization was to arm the Syrians.
You've got a town that's about to fall and 5,000
vet and then train the Syrians. This is what the president...
Vet and train, but we've obviously moved beyond that. We are now bombing. Why isn't this being debated more? I mean, obviously, this morning, Washington's waking up, and you have a lot of people in the Pentagon saying the president's just not giving them what they need.
And there's impending
Shouldn't we be having armed services committee meetings? Shouldn't we be having a lot of hearings?
Well, there have been a lot of hearings. What a lot of us have asked for is a broader plan from the president, not just air bombing. What is the president going to do to if he says he wants to eliminate ISIL, which we want? What is his plan to do that? He hasn't laid that plan out. Ultimately, Barack Obama is the commander-in-chief.
Shouldn't you guys be in session? Shouldn't the president call you all back?
He can call us back, and we'll be there tomorrow if he wants to lay out a broader plan, if he needs further authorization from Congress. We've made that clear. If there's anything else the president needs from Congress to address Islamic terrorists, we will be there tomorrow.
So, Mike, I've heard in part the president didn't want a more expansive voter authorization because a lot of Democrats would be left out there and not supporting him. I wonder, because, I mean, obviously Republicans are going to be more aggressive in this fight against ISIS. I wonder whether the president calls everybody back, even if it's going to embarrass his own party.
Well, maybe the president is used to dealing with a Congress that, you know, no matter what he says or the Congress, you know, the majority in Congress balk at whatever he says or does.
Well, we actually gave him the authorization he asked for. For once, the president ought to say, okay, Congress actually responded to the request that I had. We debated it extensively. We had over 5 hours of debate on the House floor. Committee hearings have been held on this. And we've said we'd like to see the president lay out a broader plan. He's been reluctant to do so.
I understand that, but I mean, it's different today than it was 2 weeks ago. You have basically ISIL, or ISIS, whatever you want to call it, is basically a par 5 from Turkey, from the Turkish border. A city of 50,000 people with mayhem and violence. They are stone-cold killers about to take over that city. Wouldn't it be edifying for the American public, as well as for the Congress itself, to have someone from the Pentagon, have the House Armed Services meet and say, why is there no plan? What are the outlines of a plan? What's within the fog of that plan?
We just had those hearings 2 weeks ago, and those hearings were held in Congress. They were broadcast on C-SPAN. We had that debate on the floor where we asked for the president for broader plans to be laid out. But in the meantime, the president asked Congress for something very specific that he said he didn't have authorization for.
What would you want the president to ask for? What does the president need? We're hearing the generals and the admirals and the Pentagon saying that he's not giving the commanders what they need. What would you personally want the president to do to stop the slaughter that's happening right now?
I think to be a lot more aggressive at saying what he's willing to do, because one of the things the president says is what he won't do. And I don't think it's a good plan to say we're not going to do this or not going to do that.
Should there be ground troops?
I think that should be an option the president keeps as an option on the table. Don't necessarily put it on the table, but don't take it off the table. What he really should be doing is putting that coalition together so that those countries in the region are putting their boots on the ground. And that was what the president said. We gave him the authorization to go and put that coalition together to be able to accept funds from these other countries and troops from these other countries.
Do you consider Turkey an ally of the United States still, considering what they've done over the past year to help ISIS build up?
When you look at a lot of countries in that region, there are a lot of questions that have been raised about what involvement they've had. Many of them want to just take out Assad.
Right.
Many of them have other interests. Our interest is to eliminate ISIL, because they're a serious threat not only to the region but to us.
What
How would we
about
characterize
Turkey's
them?
inaction? Are they an ally?
Well, I don't want to get into saying what each of the countries in the region have done. Some have done some things that we don't really support, but some are also countries that have the ability to be a part of this coalition and help us right now. What we've got to be concerned about is what are those countries in the region going to do to help us eradicate ISIL? And if they're willing to do that, then they're going to be important to this coalition. They have other agendas themselves, and we can't be getting in the middle of all these other fights. We've got to be focused on what's important to protecting America's national security.
What if the President of the United States came to the Congress and said, look, we have a plan that involves working with Iran to defeat ISIL? What would your reaction be?
Well, I'd like to see the president stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. I don't think he's doing that adequately. That's a major threat. But one of the bigger, broader questions that many people have brought up is, does the president want to revisit the existing authorization for use of military force that goes back to 2002? That's the last time Congress debated and voted on that. Does the president have his own fingerprints he wants to put on it? What is his vision of what the authorization for use of military force should be? Congress would be willing to debate it if the president laid it out. That's ultimately the president's responsibility. We've asked him to come up with those kinds of plans.
Congressman Steve Scalise, thank you for coming in. Still ahead?
Almost represents James Carville in Mary Mac.
Just a sliver outside, but I've got some of the city of New Orleans and all the suburbs. Great to be with you.
Great city.
Par 3 from James.
Great city, great